So it all started at graduation, class of 2019. I loved music, video games, and my friends. As a senior, I had a tough year. I always felt like I had to be perfect in everything I did. And as a result, I started to see signs of severe anxiety and depression. I began seeing several therapists and got on several different medications. In addition, I began self-medicating with nicotine and marijuana. Indeed, the marijuana helped, but my grades went downhill. But by the skin of my teeth, I'd made it. I remember looking at the auditorium filled with classmates whom I'd spent the previous 4 years of my life with. I had a lot of friends and felt like I had built up a bit of clout at my school. In that moment, I saw a juxtaposition between me and my newly transferred freshman self that would hide in the bathroom in the morning before first period. At that time, I felt completely alone, and I just wanted friends. By graduation day, I got what I wanted though, and I laughed a bit at who I was and how I'd changed. I walked the stage and got my diploma, and I proceeded to soak in the present moment with my peers. I knew that would be the last time I'd see most of them. Graduation day is about the future, and I could see that for many of my classmates. It was very bright. All of them soon to be lawyers, doctors, athletes, and so on. But what did my future look like? I genuinely had no idea. I got accepted into a decent school and arbitrarily decided on a degree that sort of fit. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. In many ways, I didn't want to be alive at all. I knew in my heart that college wasn't for me though, but I still planned to go. That following summer, I spent time with my mother. My parents got divorced when I was young, and she'd been struggling with life for as long as I could remember. Years before, she'd been laid off from the job she'd held for a decade by a company that didn't care about her. That hit her hard, and she fell into addiction. It hurt me to see her decline every day, knowing there was nothing I could do to help. I didn't have a job. A few months prior, I quit my job of 2 years as a cashier at a large East Coast supermarket. I hated it from the beginning. I always felt like I didn't matter at all there. Not to customers, not to most of my coworkers, not to my superiors, and especially not to the company. I'd think, who here would even know my name if I didn't have a name tag? The only reason I stayed for so long was to be around a coworker I met because I dropped a clementine on the floor while bagging items. They picked it up for me. So there I was, doing nothing but sporadically writing a song I started with my friends a year prior, but didn't expect it to amount to anything. Summer was almost over, and I started to dread having to go off to college. On the night of August 11th, 2019, I followed my usual routine of smoking marijuana before bed to sleep, as well as for recreation. After that, though, something was different. But what was it? I didn't know. As I used my phone and scrolled Twitter, I saw an order of tweets that sent a clear message to me. The beautiful girl from my school that I had a huge crush on but never had the guts to try to talk to was going to meet me outside my house at 3 a.m. Wow, I cracked the Twitter code. But I thought, how did she know where I lived if I never messaged her or really spoke to her? But I brushed it off. That didn't matter, because she was going to meet me there at 3 a.m. And what was this presence I felt? As I used my phone and the realization hit me, it's the government. And they've been watching me. Why? Because there's something wrong with my father, and I'm unsafe in the house. The government/police were now communicating with me via apps on my phone, and I had to get out of the house. So at around 4:30 a.m., I walked out of my house, got in my car, and drove off. Where to? I didn't know. But the government would surely guide me, and the girl would call me once I got to the safe place I needed to go. If it isn't clear by now, what I'd smoked had been heavily laced, and I entered a short-term state of drug-induced psychosis. After a bit of driving, I noticed that I needed to get gas, so I pulled into the nearest station to fill up. Next, I just fucking lost it. I needed to call 911 to activate the government to save me. I don't even know what I said during the call. I hung up on the operator, went into the gas station with my car still running, and talked to the clerk for a moment. After probably freaking him out, I went and pulled the fire alarm. Then I walked out onto the road, started dancing, intending to commit suicide by playing a game of chicken with oncoming cars. I knew I was either gonna die or not, and either outcome was fine with me. Through a miracle, I didn't get hit, and I decided to walk up to another gas station that was close by. I walked in, danced for the camera that was connected to a visible monitor, and took off my pants, and you guessed it, I pulled the fire alarm. It's not funny. Next, I walked outside to the grass, laid down, and passed out to the sound of the fire alarm nearby. The following 11 days were marked by handcuffs, a police SUV, a hospital, nurses, psychiatric wing, and my father who visited me repeatedly. I refused to come back home with my father and instead opted to be released from the hospital to the local homeless shelter. When the day came for me to be released, I decided that I was gonna go limp and keep my eyes closed. So the staff put what little belongings I had into a plastic bag, carried me, and placed me into a van. Upon arriving at the shelter, I got out and immediately laid down on either the sidewalk or in the middle of the parking lot, I don't know. Eyes still closed, with my bag of belongings as a pillow. After a while of just laying there, basking in the sunlight on that hot day, a man in his late 30s began speaking to me. He handed me a couple banana cookies, which were mad good, by the way, and he tried to converse with me. He told me his name was Roderick. It took me a while to respond to him, but after some time I figured he wasn't gonna leave me alone, so I finally spoke. Simply told him to play a song from his phone. I missed listening to music, and that's all I cared about in that moment. He asked what I wanted to listen to, and I replied, anything. So there I was, homeless, laying down with my pillow of clothes, talking to a man whose face I never saw. Roderick pulls out his phone and explains that this band was big when he was in high school, and asked me if I'd ever listened to punk bands. Of course I had, and figured he'd play a song I knew. To my surprise, Roderick played a song I'd never heard before on full blast. Damn It, by Blink-182. At that exact moment, I knew my future, and it was music. I guess this was growing up. also like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Yahweh, Allah, God. Without him, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be alive.